Hi, I'm Mark Wallace. Today I would like to introduce you to the PocketWizard AC3 ZoneController for Nikon cameras. The AC3 is a great accessory because it allows you to quickly dial in your lighting setup, and it's small, lightweight, and extremely simple to use. Using the ZoneController with your PocketWizard Mini and multiple flexes allows you to control multiple remote speed lights and even some studio lights or both at the same time. And you can control all of these lights right from the top of your camera. No more running back and forth to your flashes to make adjustments. Well, here's how it works. You slide the ZoneController right onto the Mini that's on your camera, and then the ZoneController allows you to assign your flashes to one of three zones. Now, these zones are called Zone A, B, and C. And to put a flash in a specific zone, you simply slide it onto your flex like this guy, lock it into place, and then turn it on. Then you slide the zone switch on the flex to the zone that you'd like to use, then turn on the flex. Now I've set up three flashes, this one in zone A, one in zone B, and one in zone C. Well, now let's take a look at how the AC3 ZoneController allows you to control all of these flashes right from the top of your camera. The ZoneController has three dials and three switches, one for each zone. With the switch, you can put a zone into A for auto, and auto allows you to use E-TTL flash. Then there's M for manual. Yep, that's right, manual. You can adjust the manual power output of your flash using the ZoneController. And finally, there's 0 or off to turn individual zones completely off. Those flashes won't fire at all. Now you can mix and match. You can have one zone in auto and one zone in manual, and you can use both at the same time. Now with each dial, you can adjust the power output of your flash up or down. When the switch is set to A for auto, you're using E-TTL, and the dial allows you to adjust the power output of your flashes in third stop increments. You have a range of plus or minus 3 stops. So you can increase or decrease the power by up to 3 stops. Now we're going to talk about how the dials work in manual mode a little bit later. Now the center point on the dial is 0. On this setting, the flash output is the same as normal E-TTL without a PocketWizard attached. To increase the output of the zone, turn the dial clockwise into the white side of the dial, and to decrease the power, turn the dial counterclockwise or into the black side of the dial. And that makes it really easy to remember. For more light, turn to the light side of the dial, and for less light, turn to the dark side of the dial. Now let's put the ZoneController to work to see what it can really do. We're going to go to the studio, and I'm going to walk you through the features of the ZoneController. Well, now that we're in the studio, let me walk you through the setup. I have a Nikon D700 with a mini TT1 mounted on it, and I have 3 Nikon speed lights on Flex TT5s as my remote flashes. Now this one's set up in zone A, this one I've set up in zone B, and behind me this separation light, this hair light back there, that's on zone C. I'm going to take my ZoneController here, and I'm just going to slide it onto my mini TT1 until it locks. And it's really nice because you can do this when the Mini is turned on or off, and you don't really have to worry about what the dials and switches are set to. You can just sort of slide it on there and let it go. It's really tolerant. Now once you do that, you'll have to press your shutter release about halfway, and the system's going to take a couple of microseconds to recognize the new gear and then start sending commands. So essentially you just sort of slide it on there till it locks and you're good to go. Now to show you how we can use the ZoneController, I've asked the model Sam to join me. So here's Sam. Are you ready to get going? Yeah. All right, so have a seat there, Sam. Now on this very first shot, what I've done is I've set zone A, the switch to auto, zone B, the switch to auto. Zone C, I've turned completely off, so that hair light is not going to fire. And so for zone A and zone B, what I've done is I've set the dials to 0. Both of them are at 0. And so what's going to happen is the E-TTL system is going to look at the exposure and give us what it expects to be the correct exposure. So let me take a shot and show you how that looks. So look right at me, Sam. All right, now when I look at this, it looks great, but it looks a little overexposed for my taste. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to underexpose this. So I'm going to take the exposure down just a little bit. So I'm going to take zone A and zone B down by a stop by just rolling the dial to 1 in the dark side of the dial and 1 in the dark side of the dial on B. So both A and B are now at -1. So let me take a shot and show you how that looks. So look right at me, Sam. Good. All right. Now that looks a little bit nicer, so I've just taken the exposure down just a little bit. Now I want to show you how quickly we can change all of these lighting ratios and turn lights on and off and do all kinds of really cool things. So over here on zone B, I want to really take the power down, so I'm just going to roll that dial to -3. I just rolled it really fast, and I'll show you how we can get some shadows on the left side of Sam's face. So Sam, look right at me. Beautiful. Okay, now we're really starting to see the light on this side of Sam's face drop, but I really want more than that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just turn it off by sliding my switch to 0, which is off. And now watch what happens. So I'll take one more shot. Okay, now we're really starting to get a lot of shadows on the left side of Sam's face, and that's exactly what I want. Now what I want to do next is we have this separation light, and I want to turn that on to see what kind of light I can get on Sam's hair. So I'm going to turn that on to A for auto, and I have my dial set to 0, and once again it's just going to use the standard E-TTL metering to figure out what kind of power to put on that hair light. So let me take a shot. And perfect, Sam. Now when I look at that, to me there's just a little bit too much light on her hair, so I just want a little subtle touch. So I'm going to take this C zone and I'm going to take it all the way down to -3 just to dial down that power. And so again, I'll take a shot. Now we can see that it's looking exactly like I want to look. Now if I wanted to do something even more than that, I can even get a silhouette. So I'll take zone A, this guy right over here, I'm going to turn it completely off, and when I do that, I'll just get a shot, and exactly as I expected, these front two flashes don't fire, just zone C, and I have that silhouette. So it's really easy to take our flashes and turn them on and off and really change the power output. Now what I want to do is show you one other thing that you can do. So I'm going to take zone C, I'm going to turn it off just like we started, and I'll take zone A and B and put them on A for auto, and then put their power output back to 0. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm taking us right back to where we started. So this is on auto at 0, this is at auto at 0. So my E-TTL system is going to look and meter the light and give me the light output that it thinks is the correct exposure. Now when we did that before, it was a little bit hot to my taste, so let me take one more shot here. Just like that, Sam, perfect. Yep, and just like before, we get the same exposure, and it's a little bit too exposed, overexposed for my taste. Now what I did at the beginning was I dialed zone A down to -1 and zone B down to -1. Well, instead what I can do is I can use flash exposure compensation that's built into my Nikon, and it behaves just like it always has. And so I can take all of my lights up or down in power. It's a global change. And so instead of having to dial all of them down by -1 or -2 or -3, I can just take my flash exposure compensation and it dials all zones up or down relatively. So I'm going to take my flash exposure compensation by hitting this little flash button right here, and I'm going to dial that to -1, and I've taken all of my lights down, and I'll take a shot, and yep, just like that, we've got a perfect exposure. Now just to show you how you can really change all of your lights quickly doing this, I'm going to take that, push my flash exposure compensation, and I'm going to dial this up +1, and you'll see that now we're going to be overexposed. And yeah, way overexposed, and sometimes you might want to do that. And I'm just doing that to make a point, and that is that you can take all of your lights and power them up or down just like that using your flash exposure compensation, just like you always have done with your Nikon system. Well, you can see that in E-TTL mode, where all the settings are relative, it's really simple to tweak your power settings between your 3 different zones of light. Now I've kept it simple with 1 light in each zone, but remember, you can have as many lights in each zone as you'd like. Well, you can also use the AC3 to control your lights in manual mode, and that's what we're going to look at next. Well, when we put one of our switches, these mode switches, onto our manual setting, which is M, it allows us to change our flash's power setting from full power all the way down to 1/64th of the output of our flash. And with the 6-stop range on our dial, full power is +3. That's the white 3 on the dial. 0 is 1/8 of full power. And then -3, that's the 3, it's on the black side of the dial, is 1/64th power. Now each setting in between is 1/3 of a stop. So what I've done here is I've set up 3 flashes, and we're going for just a traditional headshot portrait type of shot here. I have zone A, which is our key light, and that's the umbrella. Zone B is the light behind Sam, and that is to give her just a little bit of a highlight on her shoulder. And then zone C is to highlight her hair, give it some texture and make sure it doesn't fall completely into black and lose all detail. So what I'm going to do here is I have zone B and C turned completely off. We're going to start with our key light, that's zone A. I have that set to M for manual, and then I have this set, the dial, the power dial, to 0, and that's 1/8 of our flash's power output, and that's just a good starting point. So I'm going to take a test shot and see what the exposure looks like. So Sam, look right at me, beautiful, just like that, and we're just going to get this nice headshot here. Good. Okay, now when I look at that, that is just a little underexposed for me. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the power. So I'm going to take this up to the white side of the dial to 1.3. Now that's a quarter power of our flash's total power. So let me take another shot and see how that looks. So again, look right at me, Sam. Great. Okay, now when we look at that, we have a great exposure. And so I've dialed in my key light. Let's move on to the highlight that's behind Sam. So I'm going to turn that one on. So I have that to M, which is manual mode. And again, I've set it to 0. We'll start there and see how much power we have and dial it up or down accordingly. So look right at me once more. And okay, we have way too much power. So we're getting lens flare and all kinds of issues. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take that all the way down to -3, which is 1/64 our flash's output power. So now I'm going to take another shot here and we'll see how this guy looks. Okay, now that is exactly what we're looking for. Just a nice subtle highlight on her left shoulder. It's perfect. Well, the problem here in this shot is Sam's hair is falling totally into black. We have no detail. So I'm going to turn on zone C, again in manual mode. And again, I'm starting at 0, which is sort of the midway between plus and minus. So it's 1/8 of our flash's output power. And I'm going to take a shot. And so we'll look right here again, Sam. And just like that. And yes, that's perfect. We have just a perfect highlight on her hair. And that's all we need. Now the cool thing is you can also mix and match your zones in manual and auto mode. And so for this setup, usually the key light here is something that our camera would do a really good job metering automatically. It would be sort of these highlights on the hair and the highlight on her shoulder that might have some difficulties in E-TTL mode. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put zone A into full auto mode and dial it back down to 0, which is where it's the starting point, and it's going to use what it thinks is the correct exposure and tell the flash how bright or how dim to be. So I'm going to have these mixed again. So my zone A is in A for auto, and zone B and C are in manual mode, and watch how I can mix this up. So I'm going to take this shot. So again, Sam, look right at me. Perfect, just like that. And awesome. You can see that we get a great exposure by mixing auto with manual, and you have total control. And with speed lights, it's just that simple. With the PocketWizard AC3 ZoneController, you have the power to control all of your flashes from the top of your camera. Now, for more information about the AC3 ZoneController and how you can use it to control speed lights or studio flashes, make sure you visit PocketWizard.com.